the return to Nazareth and the childhood of Jesus. For many months, the Holy Family lived in Egypt, a land of foreign tongues and ancient temples, where the great river wound through green fields and deserts stretched beyond sight. Their small home stood near the edge of a village, humble yet safe. Joseph worked as a carpenter, building tables, plows, and yokes for the villagers. Though his hands grew calloused and his back weary, he never complained. He was grateful for the work and for each morning that dawned with his family safe beside him. Mary tended their modest home, her days filled with the soft rhythms of ordinary life. She baked bread, mended clothes, fetched water, and sang to her child in the quiet hours of the afternoon. But even in the simplest moments, she felt the mystery of her son. Sometimes, while hanging laundry or grinding grain, she would look up to find him watching her, his eyes filled with a deep, knowing calm that seemed far beyond his years. He was a bright and gentle child. He laughed often and asked questions that made even the elders pause before answering. He would wander to the riverbanks to play with other children, yet his kindness set him apart. Once, when a bird fell from a nest, he lifted it tenderly and whispered words so soft Mary could not hear, and the small creature fluttered its wings and flew away. Mary said nothing of such moments. She only stored them in her heart, as she had done since Bethlehem. Then one night, as Joseph slept, an angel came to him again in a dream. "Rise," the angel said, "take the child and his mother and return to the land of Israel, for those who sought the child's life are dead." When Joseph awoke, his heart swelled with gratitude. He told Mary, and they prepared at once for the long journey home. They packed what little they owned, tools, cloth, and the small wooden toys Joseph had made for Jesus, the gifts of the wise men. Though precious, were mostly gone, spent to sustain them during their years in exile. But they needed nothing more than what they carried: faith, love, and the promise of God's protection. The road back to Israel was long and dusty. The child, now a little older, walked beside his parents, sometimes laughing as he tried to match Joseph's stride. Other times he would wander ahead, stopping to watch the wind move through the grass or to trace shapes in the sand. When they crossed the border into Israel, Joseph learned that Herod's son, Archelaus, now ruled in Judea, a cruel man like his father. So, warned again in a dream, Joseph turned northward to the hills of Galilee. There lay the small town of Nazareth, quiet, tucked among green slopes and olive groves. It was here, in this humble place, where their story had begun, that they settled once more. And there, Jesus grew. Nazareth was a village of farmers, shepherds, and craftsmen, ordinary folk who knew each other's names and shared their bread in times of need. Life was simple but full. The air was filled with the scent of tilled earth and cedar shavings from Joseph's workshop. From early morning till dusk, the rhythmic tap of Joseph's hammer could be heard. Jesus often stood nearby, watching intently as his father worked. His small hands learned quickly how to measure, how to cut, how to smooth the wood. The tools that once seemed heavy in his hands soon felt familiar. Joseph taught him more than carpentry. He taught him patience, humility, and the dignity of honest work. He taught him that a man's worth lies not in wealth or status, but in faithfulness. At night, when the stars shone bright, the family would sit outside their home. Mary would hum softly, her voice blending with the chirping of crickets, while Joseph told stories of the prophets of Abraham, Moses, and David. The boy listened in silence, his face turned toward the heavens as if the stars themselves whispered to him. Sometimes, when Mary looked at him, she felt both joy and ache, joy for his laughter, ache for what she sensed lay ahead. Simeon's words still echoed faintly in her memory. A sword will pierce your own soul also." She did not understand it fully, but she felt its truth. As Jesus grew, he became known throughout the village for his gentleness and wisdom. He helped neighbors mend fences, tended to wounded animals, and played with the younger children. Always patient, never harsh. When he came of age, he began to study the scriptures more deeply. The rabbis at the synagogue marveled at his understanding. Where did this boy learn such things? They would whisper to one another. He speaks as though the words live inside him. He seemed to carry a quiet joy that drew people to him. When others quarreled, his words brought peace. When they despaired, his smile brought comfort. There was something about him, something pure and steadfast, that made even the weary feel hope again. And yet, for all his grace, he lived simply. He fetched water, carried lumber, shared his bread. He was fully human, and yet something in him shone with divine light. When Jesus was 12, Joseph and Mary took him to Jerusalem for the feast of the Passover, as was their custom. The city was crowded and alive with pilgrims from every corner of Israel. After the festival, as they began their journey home, Mary and Joseph assumed he was walking among the group of relatives. But when evening came, they realized he was missing. Panic gripped them. They searched among friends and travelers, calling his name through the darkening streets. When they could not find him, they hurried back to Jerusalem. For 3 long days they searched, hearts heavy with fear. At last, they found him in the temple, sitting among the teachers, listening and asking questions. All who heard him were astonished at his understanding. Mary, breathless with relief and confusion, ran to him. "Son," she cried, "why have you treated us like this? Your father and I have been searching for you in great distress." Jesus turned to her with calm, wondering eyes and said, "Why were you searching for me? Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house?" Mary and Joseph did not fully understand his words, but they knew there was a wisdom beyond them speaking. Then he arose, smiling softly, and went with them back to Nazareth, obedient and loving as ever. The years passed quietly after that. The world went on as it always had. Empires ruled, wars raged, seasons turned, but in a small town in Galilee, the Son of God grew in wisdom and stature, in favor with God and man. Mary watched him grow taller, stronger, kinder. She saw in him the reflection of heaven itself, the same hands that once clung to her finger, now strong enough to shape wood, the same eyes that once gazed up at her in wonder, now filled with compassion for the world. There were days when she would hold him close, still calling him her little boy, and he would laugh, reminding her gently, "Mother, I am about my Father's work." And she would nod, hiding the tears in her eyes, knowing that one day that work would call him far beyond the hills of Nazareth. For now, though there was peace, the peace of a home filled with love, laughter, and the quiet presence of God among them. The child who had been born in a stable, worshipped by shepherds and kings, had become a boy, then a young man, still humble, still holy, still the light of the world. And though the world did not yet know it, the story of salvation, the story that began on that silent, starry night in Bethlehem, was only just beginning.